Okay, it's 7:02. We do have a quorum. We will wait for Commissioner Felsenthal for just like maybe one more minute. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the June 1st ANC 1C general meeting. We have a quorum. Commissioner Boots, I don't think will be attending tonight, but we should have a quorum anyway. So welcome to the ANC 1C meeting. So if everybody could please introduce themselves, let's go around the neighborhood starting at 1C01, please.
Hey, this is Howard Bollicky, the commissioner for ANC 1C01, which is the far southwest corner of ANC 1C, starting at Connecticut and Florida, working its way up along Columbia, basically over to 18th and Wyoming, and then back down to Florida. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Peter Wood, ANC 1C03, that's 18th to 19th, but more to Wyoming, right in the middle.
Commissioner Faulkner?
It took me a second to unmute. Megan Faulkner, Commissioner 1C04, northwest corner of Adams Morgan, the area surrounding Walter Pierce Park.
And I'm Deb Felsenthal, Commissioner of 1C05. It's in Upper Lanier Heights on the west side of Columbia and north of Ontario.
Jake Falaschini, Commissioner 1C07, and I'm just going to keep going with the heart of Adams Morgan. It's 18th to 17th, roughly, from Florida up to Lanier, with a few liberties here and there.
Thank you. My name is Fiona Clem. I'm 1C08. I'm in the southeast corner of Adams Morgan. So getting to today's agenda, before we approve the agenda, are there any additions or subtractions? And there is an addition for an amendment to the settlement agreement for Johnny Pistolas. Commissioner Wood worked on that with KCA, and it just got signed this afternoon, so that is the reason for it. And so if we could add that to the agenda, please. Are there any questions about that amendment? We can discuss more during the time of discussion, but okay. If there's no discussion on that, we will add it to the agenda. All those in favor of adding it to the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it'll be added to the agenda. At the end, well, we'll add it to the ABC and Public Safety Committee area. So the agenda has been approved. All right, great. So on to officers' reports. As the chair, I just wanted to say, as I mentioned, I'm 1C08, and I just wanted to say that right now the Committee of Redistricting has changed my SMD, and the has been voted out of committee and is now going to the council as a whole. So if anybody is listening to this and they live in this driver's section is now moved to 1B. The reason I mention this on a public meeting, as I have mentioned on several other occasions, is the fact that PS, the MPD and fire department will be are going to get redeveloped in the next 10 years during this next census, 10-year census block. So what that means is that development, which will impact Adams Morgan directly, it'll impact our schools, it'll impact our buses, it'll impact our neighborhood, it will impact our parking, it will impact everything about our neighborhood, has been given to 1B. So if that is something that you think should be discussed with your at-large council member, Alyssa Silverman, or your Ward 1 council member, Brianne Nadeau, then please feel free to do that, because I do believe that 1C should have great weight on the redevelopment of those two buildings. That's the chair report. Thank you. On to the treasurer's or the secretary's report. Sorry. Thank you.
Secretary's report is just as far as meetings go through the rest of the month. There has been a slight change to our meeting schedule for the upcoming month for our committee meetings. Our PZT meeting, which is normally the third Wednesday of every month, will be shifted to the 5th Wednesday of June, because June is one of the 3 months or 4 months a year when we have 5 Wednesdays as opposed to 4 Wednesdays, and currently it's free, and we had some conflicts internally, so we're going to shift that around, make sure that everybody gets notification of that, but I just wanted to make sure that that was clear in the meeting today.
Thank you. Treasurer Faulkner.
Hi, thank you. So our bank account balance is currently at $2,876.22. As I think I mentioned last month, we are continuing to resolve some things with the Office of ANCs, so we can get several allotments that were due. I think we are very close to having that resolved, so I'm hopeful I'll have a positive update next month with a bigger bank account balance on the way. No major expenditures this month to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the commissioner announcement, as well as the committee chair announcements. So we can go around the neighborhood, starting with Commissioner Bollicky from 1C01.
Oh, thank you so much. And I just have 3 quick points to make. I assume there's like a larger crowd than usual viewing this, and I'll try to keep my things moving. I did appreciate all the emails I got this afternoon regarding the pedestrian zone we'll be discussing later. So strap in, folks, and we'll be there in a few minutes. But just wanted to make 2 positive things that have happened recently here in 1C. The intersection down at T in Florida, which is a challenge for pedestrians because it feeds traffic off of Connecticut down to Florida, has gotten its pedestrian safety upgrade, which I think was something that was requested before I even took this seat, but they've repainted everything that needed to be painted and put up all the plastic bollards. So that's definitely a step in the right direction, and appreciate that. Also, the second point, the National Park Service has cleaned out a little remaining trash pile from a COVID era homeless encampment. And that just happened a few days ago. I've been in touch with them as this developed, and they did make sure that it was, in fact, an abandoned site. And really all we had left there was a bunch of trash that was lying on a bunch of plastic. So hopefully the folks who lived there in the past have found something safer, cleaner, and better. So that little site's back to normal. And also just a quick public service announcement. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but there is an election coming up on June 21st, and want to let folks know that in the northeast corner of 18th and Columbia, there's a ballot drop box on that little plaza. And also starting on June 10th, advanced voting will be available in person down at Marie Reed School on 18th. So with that, hand it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wood.
Thanks. So I'll start off next Wednesday. So June 8th, 7 p.m. will be the Alcoholic Beverage Control and Public Safety June 2022 meeting. I think it's still going to be, from what I can tell, the same agenda as the last month, which is reviewing a bunch of renewals for liquor licenses and a public safety review from an officer from the 303 district in Adams Morgan. As far as ANC 1C3 goes, there's been a lot of activity. In Calorama Park, there's been a lot of volunteers helping. I mean, if you see the flowers and all the different parts that are being held, just beautified, that's coming from volunteer labor, myself included. There's still opportunities for watering, things like that. If anyone's interested, please reach out. I can direct you to the people who will put you to work. And if not, just say thanks to the people when they're working. There's one event, this is technically 1C07, but I just know about it because I've had contact with the artists since before Commissioner Falaschini took office. There's an event that was scheduled tomorrow for Unity Park. It's getting moved to Friday. If you know more, you can add as well, but come out to Unity Park on Friday at 7 p.m. if you're free. It's already up, the Sorry exhibit from Monica. And back to 1C3, I guess this is also with 1C01, the waterway or the pipes are getting replaced. It's been, not on time, the whole project, as is often the case. But some people have come forward with different concerns and things. Continue to do so, feel free. That's what we're here for, is to be those liaisons. I think most have been mitigated, but you never know what pops up. So thank you to everyone who has.
Thank you. Commissioner Faulkner.
Yes, thank you. So for the PZT meeting this month, which as Commissioner Falaschini noted, will be on June 29th. There's nothing on the agenda yet. I expect there will probably be something by the end of the month, but we'll see. I wanted to note last year, the commission passed a resolution and collected signatures in support of opening the field at Walter Pierce Park to the public. And they, in last August, they agreed to. I recently followed up with them to get updated hours for this summer. So I'll paste those in the chat. There are community hours most days. That is pending other permit requests though, so that could change, but I'll post that in the chat in a moment. And just a reminder that no dogs are allowed on the field at Walter Pierce Park. There is a dog park right there, and dogs can damage the field. It's not just for, because, some people are afraid of them. It's because it can damage the field, and it has been the reason that the field has needed to be replaced in the past. So please take your dogs to the dog park. And if and we're hoping to get new signs to make that clearer soon. But just a reminder about that. And that is all for my updates.
Thank you. Commissioner Felsenthal.
Hey, yeah, so, the Confluent bike lane should be getting installed within a couple of weeks. I was told mid-June now. It got delayed a little bit due to some other construction projects that had to happen nearby. But it should be getting installed on Argonne and Lanier. The whole thing should take a day to install. And just to clarify, there will be no parking spaces taken away as part of this. It's just paint on the road, and we'll just allow bikes to go contraflow to the direction of traffic. Second, as I'm sure some of you may have noticed, there's a lot of repaving going on right now. Columbia Road, as well as Euclid, a good amount of Euclid is getting repaved right now. But it shouldn't last very long. It's not supposed to last longer than 5 days. So it should be, my understanding is it should be concluded within the week. But yeah, very much looking forward to that. So yeah, that's all my updates.
Thank you. Commissioner Falaschini.
Thanks so much. We've got some fun stuff coming up in the neighborhood this upcoming month, and also wanted to thank the bid for the really awesome story hour that we had in Unity Park this past weekend. It was nice to have the kids out there, and mine certainly had a really good time. So thanks for that event. We got another one upcoming later this month. I believe that they're doing it the last Sunday of every month for the next 2 or 3 months. But I'm sure that the bid will report more on that. As Peter said, we also have, Commissioner Wood said, we also have the art exhibit that's currently up in Unity Park. It's really nice to have there. Yes, every Sunday of the month at 11 a.m. Thanks, Kristen. And then also up and coming, we are going to have a DC-wide soccer tournament that's going to take place at Marie Reed Soccer Field on Saturday, June 25th. So the day right after the last day of school. We're going to have folks from all over the city coming out to play some soccer in the neighborhood. It's being sponsored by local businesses. we're very excited to have that taking place in the SMD and in Adams Morgan. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Most of my updates were covered. I was going to discuss the paving in the neighborhood. One of the things that I have noticed is I was expecting after the paving to have some sidewalk, some crosswalks painted also, and I was surprised at how that hasn't happened. There's some outstanding TSAs that have requested some safety crosswalks or new crosswalks, and so I will be reaching out to Mignon about that, but or our DDOT rep. But also somebody reached out to me, or several people reached out to me about the de facto dog park in Meridian Hill Park, and I would just like to report that the park rangers are responding, and hopefully the dog owners will be cognizant of safety issues as well as the laws, which are that certainly in the national park, all dogs are supposed to be leashed. And finally, this Saturday, the farmers market is going to come back to Unity Park, so that's good news. So those are my updates. All right, so up next we will have public announcements. For 2 minutes a person, please. If you have a public announcement, feel free to raise your hand and you will be promoted as a panelist, and you'll be able to give us an announcement for 2 minutes. Kristen Barton from the Adams Morgan bid, please.
Hey, everyone. How's it going? Thanks, Jake, for the shout out about the Drag Queen Story Hour. Yeah, it's a really fun event. And it's for a little less than an hour on the last Sunday of every month at 11 through the warm weather months. We will continue. We'll hope to continue those again next spring. And when it gets warm, but it'll be through October for now. But I also wanted to tell folks a little bit more about all of our spring events. And if you'll hang on just a second, so I can switch my screen here. All right. Okay. So let's see. All right, so Bike to Work Day. I know a few of you were able to come through and enjoy that. And thanks to Megan and Jake for your help with that. I was not here, but I understand everything went really well. And we had about 300 people come through, I think. And a big thanks to Trist for the bagels and coffee. Yeah, it's a really great event. I think City Bikes did a bike clinic, and there were some bike ambassadors from WABA there also. So it's a great event. I think I don't know if Megan or Jake, you want to say anything more about it? I know you were there and I wasn't.
It was great. It was awesome. And it was great to see people out, and I think a lot of people appreciated it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so the Bike to Work Day is organized by COG, the Council on Governments. It's a regional event, and there's over 70 some pit stops now throughout Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So the event has really grown a lot in the last few years. So okay, and then. Movie nights. So I think a few of you have come out to our first 2 movies. The theme this year is The Road Less Traveled. So last week was The Princess Bride, and then last night was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. In honor of Pride Month, we're showing Queen of the Capitol next Tuesday. And the filmmaker, Josh, will be there along with Muffy Blake Stevens, who is the star of the movie. So and they're going to do a little pre-show Q&A. So come out for that. The Q&A probably will start around 8, and the movie will start probably around 9, because we have to wait for the sky to get dark so you can see the screen. And then June 14th is Keanu, and June 21st is Encanto. And the Marie Reed PTA may be doing a COVID vaccination clinic that evening in partnership with us. So they are figuring out the logistics of that, but they would like to do that on the last movie of the year, which is close to the end of school. So, and Encanto is kind of, more designed for a younger audience. So we're hopeful that that will come together. We're also working with DCPL and the Mayor's Office on LGBTQ affairs for another Pride movie on June 24th on the field at Marie Reed. And the Embassy of Switzerland reached out to us. They have a movie that was made by a Swiss producer, and the filmmaker is going to be in DC, and they'd like to show that at Marie Reed Field as well. So we don't have a date for that yet, but we're working with the school and with DGS to get that scheduled. Let's see, what else here? Excuse me. Yeah, and then we're also working on a short music series that would probably be in the month of August for 3 or 4 weeks. This would be with members of the National Symphony Orchestra, either a trio or a quartet. So it would be music, and we're hopeful to do that in Calorama Park on either Tuesday or Wednesday nights in August. So stay tuned for more to come on that. But that's my update on our spring summer programming. And of course, Porch Fest will be October 1st. So first Saturday in October. So there'll be a lot more coming about that in the coming months. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kristen. There was a question in the chat about Porch Fest and safety recommendations. Does the bid ever plan on closing streets around that?
Yeah, so we will probably close Lanier this year and get a block party permit for that because Lanier has multiple porch hosts. So yeah, we will probably get a block party permit with the in partnership with the residents on Lanier. They actually have to be the ones to apply for it, but we'll make sure that they do that in anticipation. Yeah, because Lanier is one of the streets that's really busy during Porch Fest. So yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Great, thank you. And somebody in the comments mentioned California also.
Okay.
Yeah,
some of it depends on where the porches are. So, and they tend to move around a little bit. So yeah, if we've got streets with multiple porches, again, we'll definitely consider doing, block party permits to close those. So yeah, we'll wait and see how the map all plays out, but we'll get started with on that program in July. That's when we really start gearing up for that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for those updates.
Yeah, sure.
It looks like we have a caller. Is that Dennis James?
Hi, this is Dennis James calling in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So Commissioner Wood made a bit of a mention about the pipe replacement project, lead and galvanized service line project that's going on the 1800 block of Wyoming. A resident there got in touch with me to tell me that she had experienced elevated radon readings due to the work that was going on. And they haven't, excuse me, at the point that she was contacting me, there wasn't even any work going on in the front yard. It was all just in the street. So that's pretty amazing. And it sent her meters. She even got a new meter, assuming that something was the matter with the old one because it had never read high. So this is a cancer-causing gas. And I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the commission so that you would know about it and anybody who happens to be listening. I'm going to post something a little bit more detailed on the neighborhood listserv. So there you go. That's what I've got right now.
Thank you, Mr. James. Commissioner Wood, do you have any further information about that, or do you want to comment on it?
I mean, I'm still trying to learn more. I don't know if we've spoken to the same person, Dennis, but I have spoken to someone who had the same exact concern. So likely to be the same person. But regardless, I mean, it's a kind of issue that is important, but also is hard to, gauge exactly what's going on. I've been in contact with the people at the appropriate agencies. Most of it was trying to deal with parking complaints about the project moving forward. But once it kind of settles down, I think that is important to, I don't have the information at this point, but definitely something that's on my agenda to try to make sure that, we don't have radon poisoning in basement units like is supposedly happening. So hopefully that's not the case. If it is, definitely on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. Also, I'd like to mention that the community, the person who updates the community on this particular project is a person named Emmanuel Briggs from DC Water. I will put his contact number in the chat. I do think that absolutely there are many ways of getting to DC agencies, but feel free also to do a 311 or reach out to Emmanuel Briggs and let them know, especially if you have a radon report that you could share. I do think that hearing directly from constituents about that would be very helpful. And the more constituents who report it, the more urgent it will be. And feel free to copy your commissioner on those emails if you decide to go that route. Thank you. It looks like we have Aiden.
You're getting swatted. What in the world?
Wow, that's fascinating. That has not happened in my entire time of being virtual. All right, Maya Harris with the council member's office. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, a little bit louder. That's great.
Okay. Is that better? Awesome. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maya Harris. I am a services specialist with Councilmember Nadeau's office. I just wanted to introduce myself. I started about 3 weeks ago with her office. So I will be covering ANC 1C on her behalf and attending the meetings and also addressing any needs that you all may have. I will share my contact information in the chat. I'm here to provide a few updates from the council. Out of respect for everyone's time, I will be brief. As you all may know, we are in the middle of budget season, and the 2023 budget has had its final vote. The 2023 budget represents Councilmember Brianna Doe's commitment to making the district safer, stronger, and more equitable for everyone. Excuse me, my cat has barged in my room. I apologize. A few things to note with the budget. She plans to address homelessness and housing insecurity. A few of the budget items included includes $120 million of new investments in the Emergency Rental Assistance, or the ERAP program, to provide critical support for district residents facing housing emergencies. And also restoration of $300,000 in reduction made by the mayor to Project Reconnect, which is a program that prevents homelessness by providing shelter diversion services that draw on the networks of people who need places to stay. Councilmember Nadeau is committed to ending housing insecurity, and these items will help here in Ward 1 and across the district. Some new investments in Ward 1 include new and improved school facilities. There's $64 million included to renovate Adams Education Campus in Adams Morgan. Health and safety investments, including funding for continued programming and outreach at Unity Park, just one of few investments in programming and outreach at city parks. And also transportation and road safety. There's $24 million to finally complete the Eastern Downtown Protected Bike Lane project, which Councilmember Nadeau has fought for years after years of delay. A few legislative updates. You all may have heard about the Infant Formula Consumer Protection Emergency Amendment Act that was recently introduced to secure that babies have access to affordable life-saving nutrition. And also the Human Rights Sanctuary Amendment Act of 2022. A few upcoming events to note. Community hours, there's pool day at Banneker Pool on Saturday. Council member and her team will be out from 12 to 3 p.m. on Saturday, June 4th. So if you have time, nothing planned, please stop by to speak with her and the team about any issues that you may have or are on top of your mind. Also, Brienne on Your Block will be held next Monday, June 6th from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Mark's Cafe. That's at 3203 Mount Pleasant Street Northwest. And finally, we will be hosting a teletown hall on Tuesday, June 7th from 5 to 6 p.m. I highly encourage everyone to sign up for our newsletter if you have not already done so. That's at brienneknadeau.com. And I will share my email address in the chat if you have any questions or need any assistance from our team. And thank you for your time. I look forward to working with everyone.
Thanks, Maya. Congratulations on your new job. Nice to meet you. All right, great. Next up on our agenda is the consent agenda, which is
Somebody raised their hand.
Thank you so much. All right. Looks like a E. Kavanaugh. Thank you, Gordon.
Sorry for not putting my full name. Brian Kavanaugh. I'm now the Vice President of the new board of the AMCA, so the Adams Morgan Community Alliance, largely responsible for putting together Adams Morgan Day. Just wanted to give you a brief update about where we are right now. We've now had 2 meetings. You're going to recognize some of the people on the board. Adams Morgan Day this year is going to come on September 11th. Try to make that as best of a celebration as we can, clearly. But we're starting to get the details together. A lot of this year is going to be a celebration of the history and tradition of dance in Washington, D.C. So we're starting to put together a few different stages for that, including at Marie Reed, Kalorama Park. So we're in the beginning stages of that. I'm also running business outreach. So I'm sure I'll be talking to Kristen. Thanks for your update earlier. I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit more together about what we're doing with BID and how we can coordinate as best as possible. But I wanted to all have met me and know that I'll be attending all the meetings on behalf of the Alliance. So that's pretty much the update as of now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian. We look forward to hearing more about Adams Morgan Day during the planning stages. If you want to put the, probably the same, but if you want to put the website and if you have contact information you want to share,
absolutely,
that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay, great. So before we move on to the agenda, is there any other public announcements? Looks like it's fine. Okay. Next up on our agenda is the consent agenda, which is just approving the minutes from May 6th. All those in favor of approving the minutes from May 6th, say aye, please.
Aye.
I didn't hear everybody, but I guess that's any nays and any abstentions. Okay, so that passes unanimously. That's the consent agenda. Moving on to the regular agenda. The first item on our regular agenda is the ABC and Safety and Public Safety Committee, which we just voted to add the First Amendment to the settlement agreement to Johnny Pistolas. Commissioner Wood, if you would like to introduce that, please.
Gladly. It was a pretty simple process. It's like a semi-common occurrence is that an establishment sometimes goes through different ownership or their business model changes, sometimes both. So if there's depending on your perspective, a dated settlement agreement in place, which was the case in this, that the ownership wanted to revisit what this wording of the settlement agreement was in order to basically make it so they didn't have to enforce a no dancing clause on the second floor of the establishment, with a few other details related to that. The KCA representation and myself and John Pistolas spoke on multiple occasions about this over the course of what feels like 3 years, but it was like 6 weeks. Not to say it in a pejorative way. It was just, it's been a long couple of months for other reasons. But it was a good process. We came to a good point, I think, in making it so that we can balance, the kind of typical issues of sound management, just because, having large gatherings and live music is one concern, but also the business was saying that their bottom line probably wouldn't be met if they're not able to sustain events in a certain way. So that was what the almost entire premise of our conversations was just trying to find that middle ground, and I'm happy we found it.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Commissioner Wood about this amendment?
Looks like there's a question in the chat.
So I see that somebody asked if JP will be insulating their premises to help manage the sound, especially the bass.
That wasn't something that we discussed. We did discuss if sound had ever been raised as a complaint, including through ABRA reports, and it hadn't. One of the main points of discussion was making it so that to a great extent, but not 100% extent, that live music would be on the second floor, which is significantly more isolated from the street when the front door is open and closing. Occasionally first floor events might happen, but their intention is to keep them on the second floors to prevent that. To answer the question though, insulation was not something that was discussed. If there's concerns with that, we can still discuss them, but I don't know if they'd be relevant to this particular agreement.
Thank you. Yes, the noise, any kind of noise mitigation would probably be discussed in the settlement agreement that was settled in 2013, and that is not what we're discussing today. We were discussing an amendment to the 2013 settlement agreement. So, so this one just talks about some other changes to the activities for the settlement agreement. So that wasn't discussed. And but if you have a noise complaint in the future, feel free to reach out to ABRA or your commissioner. Thank you. Commissioner Falaskini.
Thanks, Chair Clem. I just wanted to, this is my SMD, and so if there is an issue with noise complaints for anything that comes up there, please feel free to reach out to me, have your neighbor reach out to me, and I'd be happy to, broker a conversation with the restaurant. Also just wanted to send my thanks to Commissioner Wood for spending all the time doing this settlement agreement, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
It looks like there's a question from Dennis James.
Hi, it's Dennis James again. On behalf of Calorama citizens, I was involved in the negotiations for the Johnny Pistola changes. Am I being heard?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so there's good protective language in the main body of the original agreement concerning noise. And I believe there's one place in the amendment where there's, I'm scrolling through it right now. I apologize for not knowing exactly. Here we go. It's the very last item, 5J. Applicant will ensure that none of the entertainment activities listed in the section shall disturb the peace, order, and quiet of the community or be heard in any residential living unit nearby. So if that were the case, then a complaint to ABRA could be made. The unfortunate part about that is that ABRA would require evidence, which usually means an ABRA investigator being inside your home hearing the sound that you're complaining about. But it's something, it's better than nothing. So anyway, just wanted to add that. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, any other questions about the amendment to the settlement agreement? If not, we will vote to support the amendment to the settlement agreement for Johnny Pistolas. All those in favor of supporting this amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you. So that passes 6-0. All right, great. All right. The next item on the agenda is the from the Planning and Zoning and Transportation Committee. It is a consideration of a letter of support for the Adams Morgan Bids planned pilot pedestrian zone permit application. Commissioner Faulkner, could you please introduce this letter?
Yes, so thank you. So I think the letter is linked on the agenda, but I can paste the link in a moment. We also, I think, are going to hear a short presentation from the bid, since I know a lot of people have some questions. I guess just a few items to note, which is that this is all still pending many details, including WMATA is still working on finalizing a bus route. And we are hoping that bus route will divert the buses, keep the buses as close to the 18th Street route as possible, so as to minimize the impact on riders. I will also note, and I'm sure that Kristen and David will talk about the fact that there is a traffic study that has been done, and that is will have recommendations for how to minimize the impact on the neighborhood. And I can talk more about the letter as well, but I will just note that the ANC has supported this in the past, and that this ANC has historically been quite supportive of pedestrian safety and public space being used for, for pedestrians and for people rather than vehicles. And so I think this fits in with that. And I'm sure there'll be more discussion about the letter. But with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Kristen and David to go.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Faulkner. Okay, so are there any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. So Kristen, do you want to introduce the letter, or are you that we're discussing the letter? So are you going to share about the street closures?
Yeah, so we can show the same presentation that we showed at the PZT committee meeting if you'd like. David walked us through that at the committee meeting. He'd be happy to do that again. David, I see you're here, but I think you're muted. Okay, great.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so can you screen share the presentation that we showed the committee? The plans for the street closure?
Well, I thought I could.
Yeah, so if you click on the screen share at the bottom, do you see the green button that says screen share?
Yeah.
And then it'll pull up a variety of stuff you have opened, and then click on the one for the
Kristen, can we just start from the beginning, please? Could you please introduce Streets for People, your grant, and what the purpose of your grant is? Let's just start there.
Okay,
So
sure.
because there are people on this call who have questions about why the streets are getting closed. I would like to clarify that Streets for People was a grant program created from the Office of Planning from the District of Columbia. It gave money to the bids around DC. One of those bids was the Adams Morgan bid. Kristen has been working since getting the money in January on plans to close Adams 18th Street in Adams Morgan a couple of times in the next 6 months. That Streets for People program is right here. I can share it with you in the chat. Okay.
Yep.
And the point is that this letter, I just want to clarify, I just want to back up a minute. Okay. Before you discuss more about the grant. This letter that the Adams Morgan ANC is discussing and possibly supporting is a letter of support for the bid to close at 18th Street once a month for the next 4 to 6 months. Okay, depending on the outcome of a myriad of studies that Kristen has been working with various agencies on. So, Kristen, can you just start at the beginning, please, and talk about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think most of you on here will probably remember that in June 2020, the mayor did a pilot street closure for a weekend at the end of June. And it was right after we moved into phase 2 of the pandemic recovery. So based on that and the success of that, we have been trying to figure out a way to do that same experience again, that same pedestrian zone. So the Office of Planning received a lot of ARPA money, that's federal money. And so they created the Streets for the People grant program. There were 5 business improvement districts that were awarded Streets for the People grant money. We were one of them. We got $525,000 to activate 18th Street. And because this is federal ARPA money, 75% of the $525,000 has to be spent on infrastructure because it's infrastructure money from the federal government. So the plan is to install some type of permanent bollard in the roadway at Calorama and at 18th Street so that we don't have to rely as heavily on DC government to activate the street and do pedestrian zones occasionally as we do now. So, in June 2020, the mayor had to use dump trucks and a lot of other DC government resources with some sort of permanent system in place where it's key activated and it can be raised and lowered very quickly. It could act in the same way with a lot less human resources required. So that was the goal of this grant. The Office of Planning loved it because it's exactly in line with the mission of the ARPA funding. So 75% of that, or about $400,000, would be spent on the infrastructure itself, installing it. And then the other $125,000 would be spent on activations, on extra policing, on permits, on a traffic study, which DDOT asked us to do, on the traffic management plan, on all of the rest of those things. So, so in the process, we hired David Levy, who's with us today, who previously worked for NCPC, the National Capital Planning Commission, and has worked on a lot of large-scale infrastructure projects like this across the city. So David's been guiding us through the process. And also when we were awarded the grant in January, we immediately organized an advisory committee of many different government agencies. There's ANC commissioners. I know 3 or 4 of you have frequently participated in the weekly advisory committee phone calls. And there's also other Adams Morgan residents who are part of the advisory committee. DDOT's on it, WMATA's on it. The Office of for Hire Vehicles is a part of it. DPW is a part of it. HCMA is on it. It's probably 20 to 25 people each Wednesday that participate in those advisory committee calls. So as Fiona referred to, there's a lot of logistics that need to be worked out, right? So this advisory committee has been working together very collaboratively to figure out some of these things and how to get them resolved. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Sure. And so, Kristen, could you please discuss the types of closures that are going to happen? Like, are they 3 days? Are they 1 day? When do they start? When do they end? And is there a tentative schedule? And then the next question I have for you is, could you please explain the planning with the departments? What studies are outstanding, and how are we going to get the answers to those studies or implement those study conclusions?
Yeah, sure. So the goal of the grant, what we've committed to in the grant with the Office of Planning, is to close 18th Street between Calorama and Columbia Road 1 weekend a month. And the closure would start Friday evening about 6 and go till midnight, and then the street would reopen at midnight and would close then again at 10 a.m. on Saturday. Would open again at midnight Saturday. It would reopen at midnight, and then Sunday would close again at 10 a.m. and would reopen at midnight. So it'd be 3 days, but the street would not be closed the entire 3 days. It would reopen at midnight on Friday night and Saturday and Sunday night. So and we would use water barriers, on the alleys and such, so people couldn't drive through the alleys. The alley the long alley on the east side of the 2400 block of 18th Street that services the parking garage would be open so that people could still get into the parking garage. So that access would not be restricted. So it's very important that people are able to access that parking garage. 1 weekend a month, we had hoped to start this back in May, but the permitting has all taken a bit longer. Also, DDOT asked us to do a traffic study because of the ANC requested conversion, the two-way conversion of Wyoming and Calorama. So because of that pending change, DDOT requested that we do a follow-on traffic study. Even though that change hasn't happened yet, we know it's coming, at some point, probably next year. So we did a follow-on traffic study that DDOT now is reviewing. And they have not finished their review of that yet, but we hope that it will happen, fairly soon. That same consultant who's doing the traffic study is also doing a traffic management plan, which David and I and our colleagues at the bid have reviewed and had some feedback for them and have sent that back to them. So that's not finalized either, but that's coming out of the traffic study. So and DDOT will get all of that. And the advisory committee is also working really closely with DDOT bus planners and with WMATA bus planners to figure out the best rerouting of the buses to mitigate both the travel time for riders and the walking distance. So a number of Adams Morgan residents who have a lot of experience in traffic design and traffic engineering have helped us do walkshed analyses to make sure that the walkshed is as tight as possible for the bus rerouting. So, and we're working really closely with WMATA and DDOT on those plans. So, and those of you on the ANC who've been a part of the advisory committee, I know are familiar with those. So.
Thank you, Kristen. In terms of rerouting, pedestrian safety, and neighborhood input, will there be analysis after every active weekend, or how will that play out for the rest of the fall?
Oh, yeah, we'll do debriefs, during the pedestrian zone, and after each one. And I'm sure after the first couple, there's going to need to be tweaks. So yeah, for sure. And, just so folks know, we're sort of proceeding down two tracks. One is the immediate, permitting track to do the closures, because we're under, contract with the Office of Planning to do them. And those will probably be done with dump trucks and the like. And then the second track is actually, getting the permits for the bollards. So, and that's going to take a bit longer. So, and that we were pursuing, simultaneously, but we know that that's going to take a bit longer.
So it's possible that the implementation this year might use dump trucks, and then in the future, okay. Are you coordinating with Adams Morgan Day? Is that one of the suggested weekend closures?
That weekend is, yes. The Adams Morgan Day organizers are coming to our board meeting, I think on the 14th of June, to talk about their plans. I don't believe they are planning a street closure, but we have not heard what all their plans are. So should that be one of the weekends of the pedestrian zone, we can certainly talk about that. But I know one of the restrictions for the pedestrian zone is that 20-foot fire lane has to be maintained in the middle of the street. So what is left, in the street now is only 20 feet because of the streeteries on both sides. So there are no structures that are able to be placed in the middle of the roadway, because the only thing that remains is the 20-foot fire lane. So all of our activations that we would plan, or the entertainment that we would plan in the pedestrian zone, is all going to be pop-up type stuff. Unicyclists, people doing a dance academy. It's all going to be very, mobile, because we can't block that 20-foot fire lane. So we have to keep that open.
Okay. And so today, what the ANC is voting on is a letter in order to support this. That's really all we're doing, right? You're doing the studies, you're doing the planning. We are here to support that by voting on this letter that will help you get some permits and support this implementation. But the bid will be doing the implementation.
That's right. Yeah. And so, in our proposal to the Office of Planning back in December for this grant, we included the previous letters of support that the ANC had given for this project back in 2020, 2021. So all of those were very, very helpful, and we're very appreciative of the ANC's support of this concept, since before 2020 probably. So yeah.
Thank you. And my final question is, what do the members of the bid or the members of the business community in Adams Morgan think of this closure?
They are most people who remember the June 2020 closure thought it was a great success. So they saw a lot more business just at a time when they desperately needed it. And just having the freedom to walk and cycle, in an open space, was really welcomed, and it brought a lot of people to the neighborhood to do that, exactly. So, and part of the plans for this also includes a couple of PUDOs, or pickup drop-off zones. So we want to make sure that both the restaurant food delivery can happen in an organized way, and also pick up and drop off of passengers. So as part of the traffic management plan, we have, I think, 4, David, right? I think there's 4 PUDO zones planned. 2 along Columbia Road at the north end, and then 2 at the southern end, I think. Is that right, David?
It's just one at the southern end on the east side.
On the east side, and yeah, in front of the Sorrento building. Yeah. And they would be 4 car lengths each. And those would be staffed. They would be staffed during the big, during the biggest, traffic times. So like dinner time and brunch time, those PUDO zones would be staffed to make sure that they're only used for those purposes. So, and that's one of the expenses that's paid for by the grant, is traffic control officers.
Great. Before opening it up to the community, I see your hand raised, Brian. Are there any questions for Kristen or David from the commissioners? Commissioner Balaki.
This is to either Kirsten or David, sort of, I won't repeat my comments in support of this that I expressed at the PZT, because we've got, additional commissioners here who would like to speak up. But my question is, where does this stand right now in terms of going through the regulatory process? How close are you to getting government approval to do this?
Yeah, David, do you want to speak to that?
I don't know if I can speak to the second part, how close are we? I can tell you that we're working closely with the agencies to put together the documents that we'll need to do an official permit application. We have not yet started an official permit application. So the pieces of work that Kristen described earlier are the efforts we're doing now, but those ultimately will be submitted for permit.
When you say submitted for permit, are you talking about submitting things to the mayor's special events task force and getting their sign off, or something else?
We've been talking a lot about that issue at our weekly meetings and other venues. There's a conversation that's going on right now at the mayor's office about how to handle these events, whether or not they should go through the task force or whether there should be a mayor's order or some other mechanism. We don't know what the answer to that is yet, but those conversations are going on actively.
Just, I was very supportive of adding a sentence, which is in this letter, which says, ANC 1C also encourages the DC government to adopt a unique regulatory system for recurring special events like this proposal. It seems that your biggest headache is DC doesn't have a mechanism for handling events like you want to do here, where you basically set up a system and then you repeat it every month or every quarter or whatever. They seem to want you to come and do the whole show in front of the special events task force. And I mean, I would certainly agree in concept. If you have to do that every time, it's a big burden on you guys. It's a big burden on the government. It's a big burden on the taxpayers. I'm not suggesting in any way that we need to roll back regulatory requirements. I've skimmed through the document that describes what the special events task force requires, and you're pulling in about a dozen government agencies, and these procedures exist, frankly, to address a lot of the concerns that I saw at last count, 16 emails against this, including 3 of my constituents and 1 in favor. I mean, we set up these hoops for a reason. It's because people have concerns about noise and trash and traffic and the whole panoply of things I've been reading this afternoon. And I would just sort of encourage my 16 correspondents to step back from the ledge just a little bit, because this is not ready for liftoff. I want to see this done. I'd like to see it done right. I think it means important things for economic development in Adams Morgan going ahead. But we are going to have to, cross a bunch of I's and dot a bunch of I's and cross a bunch of T's, or vice versa, to get this thing done. And so I would just encourage everyone to sort of take a deep breath and understand that we've got a long way to go on this thing. I know that what you guys originally set up was very aspirational. You set up a schedule of doing this once a month, I think way back when, starting in May. And as the calendar ticks forward, those months are disappearing. And for starters, we've got a primary on June 21st, which makes every elected official on the ballot in DC very risk averse about doing anything that could be construed as a mistake we didn't have to make because somebody took an action they didn't need to take. And then we get into, as we mentioned, the Adams Morgan Day in September. So you're looking at maybe August or October or something like that. And you may just wind up getting some sort of expedited consideration from the task force. At the same time, we need to encourage and extract interest from candidates and elected officials to sit down and address the need to do a permanent regulatory system so we can do these kind of things, because I think these are good ideas. I support them, but everybody has a right to be heard. Everybody has a right to have their interests defended. And that's, slow and opaque as it may be. That's why we have this system. So with that, I'll yield back to the chair. Thank you.
Yeah. So the Mayor's Special Events Task Group is designed for one-day special events. And this is a recurring, monthly event. So, the MedSeg, as the acronym reads, is not really the appropriate venue for something like this. And that's what the Office of Planning and many others think. So that's why we're trying to figure out, exactly what the mechanism is to permit this. So, I do think that there will probably be a legislation introduced by City Council to amend the MedSeg process to incorporate more activations like this, because this is something that the Office of Planning and others throughout the city want to see happen, on streets like Pennsylvania Avenue, and how do you do that in an organized way that, is that doesn't cost as much money, right? So some type of easily activated closure system, could be appropriate in other places other than 18th Street. So there's a lot of interest in this across the city.
Thank you. Commissioner Wood.
All right, so this is a comment or a set of comments and not a question, if that's okay. A lot of this is going to probably be a little bit repetitive, both of tonight and also past meetings, but a lot of people did send emails, and I think a significant number are my constituents. So I just want to make sure that they're raised, because I think there are some really important points that I'm pretty sure most of us have discussed, sometimes ad nauseum, but just to make sure they're on the table here as well. Like Commissioner Balaki said, my tally in my inbox, I think I got 17 opposition emails and 2 in favor. The population of ANC 1C is currently about 18,457. So it's like roughly 1 person per 1,000 people through email. But I've spoken to a lot of people on the streets lately, just with the better weather, about traffic safety immediately here on Calorama and 18th. I've noticed that a lot of people have not necessarily been opposed to a closure, but they're opposed to unbearable traffic and congestion on the side streets, which is not necessarily that. Some people are against both, but I think a lot of people are just concerned with the noise, concerned with traffic. There are some points, some of the emails from the last 24 hours noted things like privatization of a public facility for the benefit of a few people, that businesses are already thriving on 18th, that opposing Calorama becoming a bicycle lane and a bus lane. Like there's some, I think, misinformation that there's no parking being removed for a bus lane that I know of, or bike lane. But I think this is something that can ideally benefit many people. I do think that the things that we've mitigated, like fire and police trucks being able to be rerouted in buses, we've gotten some messages of people saying, oh, it's all going to go onto Calorama Road. Very much a point, I think, that has been raised many times to try to avert that type of situation as much as possible, because that's to no one's benefit, including the people who, even if someone has explicit financial interest in this, which I think there's more than that, that wouldn't be good for business. And there's a lot of other interests at play as well. And then just one other point, this has happened in the past as well, where there's been claims that there was no transparency in the process and that there haven't been public meetings. I have a few quotes here that were kind of funny. Some of them I think were legitimate, some maybe not so much, but at least to my record, I did a kind of quick search the 15 minutes before this meeting. May 18th, 2022, PZT meeting discussed this issue. June 3rd, 2020, ANC 1C meeting discussed this issue. At multiple PZT committee meetings from the fall of 2017 to the spring of 2018, this was courted. The Adams Morgan Commercial Development Coalition had meetings independently organized in 2020. The BID has had comments at multiple ANC meetings and also organized an independent committee to discuss this on multiple occasions. And this very meeting that we're having right now is a specific example of courting public input. So thank you for all those who have. Of course, not everyone sees eye to eye on every single thing, but really do. I said I had a comment, but also an appreciation for just really all the care. I know that we all get frustrated with how things go slowly, but it does at least allow us the opportunity to really hear from a lot of voices, some of which I hadn't heard before, of different concerns. And I think that this has been going slowly, but in a manner that has taken all of these different dissents and support into consideration. So thank you. Wanted to get that out there. Sorry for being so verbose. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Commissioner Wood. Any other comments or questions from the commission?
And Fiona, I think that the presentation that we gave at the committee, I think the ANC has that on your website, right? I haven't checked for it, so that's why I'm asking.
Yes, we do. Yes, and yeah, thank you. All right, so if there are no other comments or questions from the commission, we'll open it up to the community. So Brian, did you have a question? Yeah.
Hey, everybody again. Thanks so much for all of that. And Kristen, thanks for that. Just to clarify what Kristen was talking about, we do have 2 members of our alliance attending the meeting on the 14th. So Cece and myself will be there, bringing our concerns, what we're thinking about in terms. Clearly, it seems that if we're going to do something like this,
We lost you there, Brian.
Brian, we just lost you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh.
All right, we're back. Sorry, every now and then with internet. It seems clearly that it would make sense to coordinate this closure with a unique event that happens once a year. That is Adams Morgan Day. It's the longest running festival in Washington, D.C. as in terms of street festival. It would be important for us to do that. And so I see that also as a wonderful idea of a recurring event, because as BID does so many events throughout the year, it's wonderful to bring people back again and again into what makes this such a vibrant community. So while we're doing a festival one day a year, there's reminders all the time throughout the year about this community and what it has to offer to the rest of the city. So we do have representation at that meeting, and we're just getting our ducks in a row in terms of what we're doing. We're aware of the incapacities that we can possibly have, of the fire lanes, of where we'll have to put tents, but that will make our planning easier if we're looking at a road closure, and we can decide how to help businesses beyond just the current streeteries that are set up, where we can put tents, where we can put stages along the street. And so that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of working with BID, and that's why I'm at this meeting today. So thank you for all of this so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From what I understand, from our work with Fire EMS or FEMS, is that there wouldn't be any structures allowed in the pedestrian zone area between Kalorama and Columbia Road. Now, south of there, if the festival's interested in, doing something else, that would be up to the festival. But in that zone, because of the streeteries that are in place that take up the curb parking lane, the only space that's left is that 20-foot fire lane. So no structures can be placed in that space because of the fire EMS access that's required. So, and we saw that firsthand when there was the fire above Jyoti a couple months ago. The fire truck took up the entire 20 feet. So that's why it's needed.
Thanks. Kristen, there was a question in the comments about the midnight reopening. What was the thought process behind that, please?
Yeah, so those were the hours of the June 2020 closure. So those were the hours that were done then. It seemed to work well. By reopening the street at midnight, that encouraged people to go home or to go someplace else. So that midnight reopening seemed to work pretty well. So we're going. That was just based on experience. So that's how that was chosen.
Okay, great. All right. So, are there any other?
So there was a question about the parking garage, I think. Might have missed it. The trajectory the cars would use to access the parking garage. Yeah. So right now we think that the traffic management plan will have cars go down from Columbia Road. They will go down Champlain Street, take a right on Kalorama, and then a right into the alley up to the garage. If they're heading northbound on 18th Street, they'll take a right on Kalorama and then a left into the alley and go up the alley to the parking garage. So that's the way that the traffic management plan is looking right now. parking garage.
Thanks. What lead time or what kind of like neighborhood notification do you plan on giving? Like if June 11th did work, I mean, June 18th worked, or I guess if we were going to July, how much lead time do you expect, whether they're
We hope,
whatever.
we hope as soon as we get the green light from the city, you know, on whatever date that they, you know, agree to, as soon as we get that, we'll broadcast it far and wide. So, yeah, and we hope that there's as much lead time as possible because we, you know, we have a lot of work to do once we, you know, get that okay.
Thank you. It looks like Dennis James has a question.
So I have a lot of comments, but I'm not sure exactly where we are in the process that usually takes place. At the May 18th PZT committee meeting, that's the only time that anybody in the neighborhood other than Kristen Barden's secret committee had a chance to see the artwork that was displayed. Are you not going to display the artwork in tonight's meeting? You know, when presumably there's more people, you know, because it's the full ANC meeting for June. I'd want to stay on, not muted, because if this is my only chance to speak, I've got numerous comments to make, but I'm just curious if you're not going to show those different slides that were shown.
So Dennis, thank you for your question. The meeting tonight is about the ANC's support of a letter in support of the closures. Are you requesting to see the design of the street closure?
I think that, don't you think the public deserves to see what is being done?
We're not the implementers of this activity. We are, the commission today is discussing whether or not we want to support the implementation of these closures. I would be more than happy to ask David to share the map. Is that what you're requesting?
I think all of those different slides should be shown so that the public can see them. I don't know how many people are on this call, you know,
okay.
But there weren't many at the PZT committee meeting. So, you know, there has been practically no circulation of this information.
Thank you, Dennis. Could I ask Commissioner Faulkner to possibly find the link to the video so that we can share it with the community, and that will update the community on a publicly noticed meeting that happened last month about the actual designs?
Yes, I can share the link, and I'll also find the link to the link so people can view the maps themselves. I'll also note that it has been posted on the ANC website, and I believe Commissioner Falaschini has circulated it to a couple of neighborhood lists at both ahead of this meeting and previously. But yes, I will post those links in just a moment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Falaschini, did you have a comment or a question? Okay.
I was just going to repeat what Megan had said about them being posted to the neighborhood list several times this past month. And I'd also just note that this discussion has happened in other presentations by Kristen Barden at our ANC meetings over the past couple of months. While not as detailed, the conversations have happened several times.
Right. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Kristen, did you have a comment? You're just muted yourself. Okay.
No, sorry. Just
okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah, talking to my husband.
Okay, great. All right. I also would like to reiterate that the ANC's input in this measure is to support the measure or not support the measure. We're supporting this implementation in the form, and our support is in the form of a letter, which everybody on the meeting can see. The letter says that we would like studies to happen. The letter says that we would like bus-free routing and PUDO zones to take into consideration neighbors. The letter clearly states that although we're not the implementers, we recognize that this is an activity in the neighborhood. So that's what the letter is talking about. I only want to mention that, like bus rerouting, I might have an opinion about it, but I'm not an implementer in the street closures. So the letter that we're discussing is about support of the bid's implementation. Commissioner Faulkner.
Yes, I just wanted to mention, just with regard to the bus rerouting, WMATA has been participating on the meetings with the bid, but I will note that while the ANC does have great weight with certain matters with district agencies, WMATA is not a district agency, and so while we can do our best to shape that, it's also an area where the ANC unfortunately does not have as much ability to influence as we do when it's DDOT or DPW, for example. So I just wanted to note that we do mention them in there, and of course we will continue to advocate for that. But ultimately, WMATA, is slightly different, and also, of course, as Commissioner Clem noted, the bid is the one implementing this ultimately.
Thank you, Dennis. Did you have a comment or a question?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I'm going to start at the beginning, and this has been the least transparent process. It doesn't even deserve the word process because nobody has known about it until May 18th. These defensive comments from Commissioner Falascini and Peter Wood are laughable because, there was no in-depth discussion of anything. I was witness to these different meetings. You're just trying to flip this one through. It's not transparent. The residents who are most affected have never been consulted. Because of my investigative work, we have started to learn some of the things about it, and I have passed on information to many people that I know. And, two of your commissioners said that they received overwhelmingly negative comments. And, one of the comments from Commissioner Wood, oh, yes, you have to compare it to how many people there are in Adams Morgan. Well, it's really not the number of people, it's the quality of the comments that were made. And when, for instance, in past ANCs, resolutions were passed as to who would represent the ANC on various different government projects. Like there was at one time an Adams Morgan traffic study, and then there was an Adams Morgan streetscape project in which there were ANC commissioners, and it was understood, publicly that they're going to be the ones who represented, so somebody could then talk to them or write to them about any of these deficiencies that I'm complaining about very strongly to you today. Your process has stunk. Megan Faulkner, you're on this committee. When was it ever said at an ANC public meeting that you were going to start serving on this task force that Kristen Barden has created? It's utterly stunning. You want to get to a certain point. Well, do it right. Go through the things that you have to do, all the steps that you have to do. Take those risks. It's, you just want an easy pathway to your results. And that's pretty appalling when this is our little bit of democracy that we have in DC. We don't have much. So anyway, I'm going to just run through a few of the issues here, and that you can't say it enough. All of the traffic that normally, could pass through the intersection of 18th and Calorama will have to go left or right. I think that going left is more attractive to people because they have Columbia Road or Connecticut Avenue to go to, which it depends on what their goals are. They want to park in the neighborhood or they want to get out of the neighborhood because it's so congested due to the street closure. At the other end, all the traffic that comes along Calvert to Adams Mill to 18th and Columbia, and then each direction from Columbia that wants to get onto 18th Street won't be able to. It'll bulge out into other parts of the neighborhood and make a big traffic jam. You know, it's nice to hear people saying things like, oh yeah, well maybe the buses shouldn't go in Connecticut. They could go on Columbia. Well, Columbia is going to be jam-packed with its regular buses and then all this traffic, which is being diverted from 18th Street. This is not smart stuff. You know, I mean, it's not so amazing to think about it. All of the little workarounds that are being discussed are negatives for the residents. Like your treatment that I heard at the May 18th PZT committee meeting for Belmont Road, which was made one way eastbound towards 18th Street. Oh, so now you're going to take away some of the parking and at the end of it, the 18th Street end, and people would then be able to drive in the opposite direction from which is the legal use of that road. It's amazing. What are you going to do? Block off that at Columbia Road? Block off Belmont at Columbia so that no one will enter it? You know, or who knows? Change the sign so that it reads, whenever there's bid is having, you know, a closure, then this street is two-way. I mean, it's absurd. All the different little things. Like, and do you think that the pickup, like the food pickup and delivery services, are going to obey the PUDO zones? No, they're going to go down the alley to the rear of establishments to get the food deliveries that they're going to make, you know, and that's going to block the use of the that alley to get into the garage. And how about the people who live there? You know, the Adams Morgan Lofts and the folks who live, there's numerous other residential buildings that back up to that alley between Calorama and the Lofts, and then north of where the access street comes in. There's numerous businesses, residential areas. This is just astounding that this could even be being discussed. We're going to close a major street, you know, that is a major part of the transportation system in this neighborhood, and we're going to toss the people who want to ride the buses off into practically another neighborhood. I think that this is extremely lacking. You should not take any action until all of this information is before us. You know, a traffic study that can be widely disseminated, any other studies, there should be public meetings for this working group, I say in quotation marks. This should be the bright sunlight should be let into this box because it stinks. It's incredibly insensitive towards residents, particularly the residents of the 1800 blocks of Belmont, Calorama, Wyoming, possibly even California and Vernon, because that's where, it's going to be felt when all that traffic that would normally be able to pass 18th and Calorama has to do something else. So I urge you not to take up this measure tonight. There's no hurry, absolutely no hurry at all. If this is a worthy project, show it. And show it so that the neighbors can understand it, Come and have a meeting with all the residents that are most likely to be affected. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. So a couple of points. One of the things that we added to the letter, was a statement requesting that when the bid gets the results of the studies that are being requested, that the bid follows them. This letter of support does not say that the bid can do whatever they want. The letter of support outlines the fact that we want safety. We want the buses to remain easily accessible. We want safety measures for bikes. We want traffic calming measures. We're not saying in this letter or in any other case, but I'm talking about the letter specifically. What we're saying in this letter is that we would like to support this pilot program. the pilot program is for this year. It's the next 6 months. We're not saying like in perpetuity. We're talking about this particular activity. So I would just like to clarify that to the neighbors again, that we are not just handing our, we're not just saying that the ANC is giving away our influence to the bid. We are supporting this project. The bid got this project. I also, if I remember correctly, sorry, if I remember correctly, this project was announced by Kristen at the February General ANC 1C meeting on February 2nd. When she announced it on that day, she also said that she was going to be gathering an advisory group, and she invited commissioners from the ANC to come to that advisory group so that there would be neighborhood input. And there are neighbors in the neighborhood also on that, as well as agency people and other people like David who have an understanding of how to implement this to the best of, for the betterment of everybody involved. I don't know if that answers the neighborhood's questions, but it doesn't look like there's any other hand raised. So if there's no other hand raised and there's no other questions or comments from the neighborhood, Catherine Rigby, you would have a question or a comment, please? Is Catherine Rigby getting promoted?
Yeah, she's coming up.
Thank you.
It doesn't look like she wants to speak.
Okay, thank you so much, Gordon. There are some questions about, we mentioned this, I've already asked you this, Kristen, but I am curious about what a success looks like. Could you explain to the neighborhood what success looks like to you?
Yeah. So the Office of Planning in the grant award asked us to, they basically told us, how success was going to be measured in their mind. They want us to do pedestrian counts to demonstrate the increase in pedestrian foot traffic. So we are purchasing pedestrian counters. There's 5 of them. They have been ordered and will be installed hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And so we can get some baseline data to then compare that to the actual street closure data. And then they also are going to collect sales tax data from the Office of Tax and Revenue to see if people coming are spending more money in the neighborhood, because ultimately this is an economic development activity, and they want to make sure that that the activation is generating more sales tax revenue for the city. So those are 2 of the data points that the Office of Planning is going to judge the success of the grant program.
And then a follow-up to that, it says, so are we counting current pedestrians? And then if we are, then if there's an increase, what would be the percentage of increase that would be considered a success?
Yeah, they haven't gotten that specific. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I also would like to remind the community that Adams Morgan Day, prior to, I'm going to say, well, it hasn't, but Adams Morgan Day used to close every street between Columbia and Florida, actually shut down side streets like Belmont for music. and attracted over 250,000 people every year. I just want to throw that out there. Okay, so thank you, Kristen and David, for your time. I think that we're done with the questions and comments, and we're going to move on to the vote and discussion on the letter in front of us. Thank you so much. Commissioners, are there any suggestions, comments, or questions about the letter that we are discussing in terms of supporting the bids implementation of the pilot program for pedestrian weekends in Adams Morgan? Are there any changes, suggested changes? No comments or questions. All right, so with that, we will vote on the letter that is in front of us, which is renewing the ANC 1C support for pedestrian zone plans from June 2020 resolution and letter. That's pretty clear. All those in favor of supporting this letter of support for the pedestrian zone plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hugely.
Are there any nays? Please say nay. Are there any abstentions? The letter as written has passed, and that is the end of our agenda. I appreciate everybody's input and their questions and comments, and thank you so much for your time this evening, Kristen. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.